Let's talk about why smart people struggle to delegate. My name is Ramona Shah, and I'm the host of the Minute to Track podcast. Here's something that most of us don't realize. The reason you are bad at delegating is probably the same reason that got you promoted. You were the one who figured things out. You got things done right, on time, the first time. That's what got you promoted. But now you are a manager sitting on work you should have handed off 6 months ago, or getting things back on your desk that was already assigned to someone else, or you're taking work back that was supposed to be done by someone else. And it's not because you're controlling, probably not in any other aspect of your life that you feel that you're the controlling type. The problem is that the math is incorrect. You might think that it only takes you 10 minutes and it takes your team member an hour, and so why wouldn't you do it? But the problem is that that type of math is only right for today. Every day you keep running that calculation, you are making a compounding investment in a ceiling, in something that won't scale and won't grow. And the skills that got you promoted are in fact then the exact skills that hold your team back now because you're not willing to let it go. And usually comes from the best intentions, because obviously you want your team to shine. You want to deliver great work. You also likely really want to help your team. And therefore, when you take stuff off their plate or you protect them from extra work, it feels like you're being a servant leader and someone who cares about results and quality and high standards. And so the intentions are right, but the math is the problem. So this episode covers the 3 patterns underneath that dynamic, a model for matching the oversight that you provide to the person and the task, and the language to use when you hand things off to set yourself and your team member up for success. A manager, let's call him John, showed up to a coaching conversation in our Leadership Accelerator program for new managers and was sharing that he was consistently working late and that he felt like he was the only one on the team who would stay back to get work done. And work that was supposed to be done by the team also kind of got routed back to him because they needed his help. So John is technically excellent, organized, and fast. Again, the things that got him promoted. And when I asked him why he was not delegating more, he said, they're just not as quick as I am. And by the time I explain it and then review it and give feedback and all that, I could have literally done it myself 2 times over. And that, if we were to give this a term, we would call the efficiency calculus trap. The short-term math truly does favor doing it yourself. What John was not calculating, though, was the cost he paid every quarter, every week. He kept that pattern going, not just in terms of time saving, but also in terms of his leadership competence, the respect he gained from his team, and how much his team grew and assigned their growth to their leader. Because the team never builds a skill when he does the work. So they also never build the capacity. And you fast forward a year in, the leader, in this case John, is the bottleneck that comes their way. He's going to be the even bigger bottleneck. It just doesn't scale. So here are 3 things to say when you have the urge to reclaim some of the work that you have already delegated or should be delegating. Instead of, I will just do it faster myself, or never mind, I got it, you want to ask, what would I need to show them once so they could own this next time? Or when someone brings you a problem that they should be solving as part of what you delegated to them, ask, what options have you looked at so far? Not, oh, got it, let me do it, or here's the answer. And then when someone's work is not what you expected, instead of giving feedback or just doing it or editing the text or whatever you might be doing, say, walk me through how you approached this. The first step in resolving any delegation challenges is that you want to understand the gap before you redo anything. silently redoing someone's work guarantees that they will never stop bringing it back to you. And not using it as a coaching opportunity to help them grow the skill is adding more work back on your desk in the future, because that math again does not work out. So the principle here is really clear. Delegation is a capital investment, not a task handoff. So you are buying future capacity at the cost of today's efficiency. And you really have to keep that in mind when you delegate, but also when you coach and you ask those questions when people come back with problems, challenges, or trying to hand stuff off back to you because they are looking for you to provide the answer or to just do it. So the question is whether you are willing to make that trade. There's a lot of gray zone in between of sometimes you have to fully delegate, fully coach, use it as a learning opportunity. And then another time you might decide not to delegate, but you have to have really sound reasons of why you would do the work yourself. And it cannot just be, let me do it because I'm faster, or let me do it because I can do it better. The tool that fixes most of this, so the tool or the framework to think about that fixes most of these delegation challenges is a clear model for matching the level of oversight you provide to the person and the task. And I want to call out 3 specific levels in that framework. Let's call this the Delegation Scale. Level 1 is do and report. They do the task and they immediately report back to you. This is great for new hires on new tasks or anyone learning a skill that they do not yet have. You kind of want to break this down into smaller tasks, not large projects that you delegate, but smaller increments of a project or specific tasks. Do them and come right back to me when done. Level 2 is do and check in. So now they own the work. They come to you at defined points. I'm going to underline this. Predefined points, in fact. This is great for building skills and trust simultaneously. Predefined checkpoints or milestones, such as by Wednesday or by Friday, or once you achieved this step, or when this decision comes up, I want to be involved. When is it that they report into you, and what kind of information do you request at that time? And to make it really clear and explicit that you're not going to be the one who's going to say, hey, where are you with this? Can you give me an update? You're expecting them to be proactive in pushing that information to you so that you don't feel like you're the one constantly pulling information out of the team. There should be this push approach where information comes proactively to you. So you have to set that expectation really clearly in the beginning. And then level 3 is that they fully own it. So this is the full ownership. And they flag exceptions or big challenges only. And this is great for more experienced people who are already familiar with the work. For each level, let me quickly illustrate what that might sound. For level 1, you might say, take a run at this and let me know what you landed on when it's done. Then make sure that you resist checking in before they are done. And ideally, you want to set a deadline, write a date on this, and you remember that. Now, your involvement mid-task, when you just insert yourself, would signal that you do not trust them for them to complete that assignment. So resist any involvement beyond what was agreed to. For level 2, the do and check in, you could say, hey, own this and let's check in on Thursday to see where you are. Bring me blockers at that point and things that you need my help with, not just updates. Define these checkpoints up front so that they know exactly when and how to loop you in. So that's being really explicit. Now for level 3, when you delegate this whole ownership to someone, you want to call that out. You want to say, like, this is yours. Come to me only if something changes that I want to know about or I need to know about so that we don't have any surprises. And of course, let me know when it's done and complete. Make sure that you focus on decisions, like what have you decided or what decisions do you want to make, so that you are signaling that you're treating them as a decision maker, because with full ownership comes the responsibility of making decisions. So you want to make sure that you're not just giving full ownership to them and say, like, you got this, but then I'm going to be the one making the decisions. that would be separate, and you'd want to clarify that up front. You own that part, and when it comes to the budget decision, for example, that part I'm going to own, so come back with any questions around the financials. Now, here's a diagnostic question for you. For every recurring task that you are still doing yourself, ask what level the person that you're thinking of that you could delegate this would be ready for. And then ask yourself what level you're currently treating them at with other delegations. The gap that you then identify as to how you actually treat them, level 1, 2, or 3, when you delegate to them, is that matching their capacity? And is that also including a bit of a stretch, like you want to continue to have them grow and take on more ownership over time? And if you notice that they're actually able to take more ownership, but you're not quite letting them because you're jumping in too soon, or you're too involved, or for the sake of efficiency, you kind of speed things up, or you just give them solutions versus having them make decisions and them think through problems. If you have some bigger work to delegate, not just like a random task that's done in 20 minutes, but something that really requires your delegation skills to show up, for you to really be thoughtful about this. And it could be an entire workflow. It could be a project. It could be sort of a stretch goal for someone else to handle that, something that they haven't handled independently before. Here are 4 specific questions that you can ask before you speak with that team member. Number 1, what does success look like, and how do I describe this clearly? You want to paint the picture. An analogy I use here is like if you buy a Lego box with Lego in it, all over it, you see the final product. And then when you open the box, you have all these little bags with the different pieces in it. We look at the final product. We want to see that really clearly. And then that helps us go through the product with checking in of what does success look like at the end. To the extent possible, you want to be as descriptive as possible of what that outcome looks like. Number 2, what level of oversight fits this person and this task? And again, check yourself here, but apply smart trust. Don't just trust them blindly when you haven't verified that they are either, reliable or competent or have the capacity or whatever that may be. If you don't know, then you have to apply smart trust, where you look for validation to step back and trust them more along the way. That's number 2. Number 3, what are the defined touch points, or what should they be? Again, if someone needs more oversight, you want to have more touch points. Give me an update, or let's talk about it in our weekly one-on-ones. Can you let me know by Friday where we stand? Send it to me so I can make sure we're on the same page. Say that up front. If you do not say that up front when you delegate, what can happen is that then as you step in, because maybe you get nervous or you start to see something, you're like, I wonder, that doesn't quite look what I was expecting. Now to them, it feels like you're inserting yourself that they did not expect, and hence it is perceived more negatively than if you had set that expectation from the beginning. I want to be involved in these kind of ways. And then when you do, it's not a problem. It's kind of perceived as neutral because you both laid that out up front. And then the last question would be, what counts as a blocker worth escalating, like taking the work back or solving it myself? It may be they still do the work, but I am now sort of directing how we're going to go about this. What would be the points to escalate? That could be a timeline. It could be sort of a signal that the other person doesn't quite have the skill yet. It could be when my boss suddenly wants to be involved. I then have to step in a little bit more to make sure that I make my team member look good in front of my boss. And so I want to have a quality check in first. Those are all reasons why you'd want to sort of change course as they go through the execution of that task. Get really clear for yourself what those are, and you can even communicate those and say, does that sound like a good plan? Look, there are a few reasons why I might insert myself more. It's if you feel challenged, if we're running out of time, or if stakeholders want to be included. At that point, I might decide to step in a bit more. Now, quick pause. If what we are covering today is resonating and you feel like, yes, this is one that you're struggling with because you're still holding on to too much work that your team should probably be doing, but it's really hard to delegate, then I'd love to tell you about the Leadership Accelerator. It is a 12-week program that we've run for new and early stage managers, people who are good at their jobs and now need to become good and great at leading. We go deep on exactly this kind of thing, like delegation, accountability conversations, how to stop this over-functioning, overcompensating for the team, how to build a team that does not need you for everything. These are things that I've proven there are clear best practices and ways to do it and ways not to do it, and you don't have to figure this out from scratch. The program is cohort-based, so you don't go through this alone, but with a small group of other managers in very similar situations. We do combine actual coaching in the group, on-demand training, and one-on-one support so that what you learn actually sticks and you do see a significant increase in both your competence and your confidence as a manager. So if you're a manager whose team is not building capacity the way that they should, or if you lead managers and want to build this across your team, check out the link in the description. We'd love to welcome you to the program. Now let's go a little bit behind the scenes, or what we look at is like the iceberg in the water. There's the top stuff that we see in the iceberg, and there's this huge chunk at the bottom of the iceberg we don't see. And I want to call out two specific patterns that persist even when managers know better when it comes to delegation. The first one is the identity shift. Now, research on managerial identity shows that high performers experience a competence threat during leadership transitions. So when your identity has been built around being the person with answers, removing yourself now from execution does suddenly not feel like growth anymore, that you're the one who solves problems. So it's not even an ego problem. It's a normal response to an identity shift that most organizations, and when it comes to leadership development, no one ever calls that out. So the work is not just about the task and how do I delegate the task, because that's not rocket science. It is proof of value, perceived value. And delegating work can feel like giving that proof of value or contribution to someone else when it's the thing that made you feel rewarded or get recognition. That's number one. The second one, now we're kind of looking at it from the other side, is learned helplessness in teams. Research extending Seligman's work on learned helplessness into organizations shows that when people find their own actions do not determine outcomes, they stop initiating. So in other words, teams that are consistently rescued by some over-functioning managers who take on more than they should do not stay passive because they're lazy. It's not like they don't want to work. They stay passive or actually become more and more passive because the system, that entire environment, trained them that waiting and taking a step back or checking in with the manager and asking for their involvement is actually the most efficient response. So again, the problem is not the task itself. It then is sort of the dynamic between manager and team. The manager, the team, and the expectations have all adapted to each other. And so in order to break that, the change to get better at delegation has to be structural and not just behavioral. Like everyone kind of needs to buy into this new way of handling things. If the manager's version is, hey, I am here, I'm available, I step in when things are at risk, then the team member's version is, my manager does not trust me and there's no point in fully owning it. So the two people in the same situation are perceiving it from two different perspectives and actually creates this kind of vicious circle. So you might have to, maybe even somewhat vulnerably, like call that out and say that, hey, look, when I stepped back in on this client's report, it was because the deadline was nearing, not because I did not think that you had it. And then follow up with, the next time I am tempted to step in, I'm going to ask you first. And if there's a deadline issue, let's stay in close communication to make sure that you got it and I'm available to help if anything does not work out. So you're sharing your perception, but then you're also transitioning to say, here's how it's going to unfold next time. So now one more thing, similar to this like difference in perspective, something to pay attention to is when you're tempted to take work back. So anytime you are about to pull something back from someone who already owns it, that, by the way, includes responding to an email that was addressed to your team member and you were CC'd on it, and they literally say, hey, team member's name, and then have some kind of question, you're just CC'd. If you answer that email, you are now taking work back that should have been delegated. So anytime you do this, or are tempted to do this, pause and ask yourself, is this a problem that they cannot solve? Or is this a problem I'm not comfortable watching them work through? Because if it's the latter, then this is totally a growth opportunity for you. We have to be able to watch other people be challenged and struggle at times in order for them to grow. That is literally how we grow. And we know this about ourselves. It's just that we have this self-confidence that we're going to be okay even when we struggle. We don't have the same kind of confidence in other people. We kind of see them struggle and we feel like we need to come rescue them, especially when we think that that is actually the manager's role, which it isn't. Again, identity shift, and sometimes also a bit of a myth. And what is the manager's role? Your role is to make sure that they're growing, learning, and that it ultimately gets done, not to make them feel comfortable and never struggle along the way. That would prevent them from truly stepping into their potential and growing as they should. Make sure that you build this in as a team agreement and say this out loud. This goes back to sort of the systematic changes. Hey, I want to get better at not pulling things back. So I am going to start flagging when I catch myself doing it. And you can call it out too if you see me doing it before I do. I totally appreciate if you say like, hey, I got this. And so that kind of transparency names the pattern before it damages trust, and it gives the team a way to participate in that holistic systematic change instead of just sort of like receiving it. So in a leadership role, what you might experience as stepping up and stepping in, your team may actually experience as a ceiling, a cap, a lid. So what you may see as maintaining standards, high standards, they experience as evidence that standards are yours to maintain, not the theirs, meaning they will deliver the work and then you will bring it up to the standards that you hold. And so the hidden cost is not just time, to go back to that calculation, that trap of trying to calculate efficiency. It is your team's belief in their own capability, and that is the true cost. Every time that you absorb a problem they were working through, you are communicating that you do not think they will get there without you. That also includes being too diligent in your feedback. If you correct their sentence structures or errors and things like this, it's as if you're telling them, I need to point this out and do it for you, versus going back and saying, hey, read this again. There seem to be some sentence structures that are incorrect. There's some grammatical errors or some typos. I want to make sure this is error-free. Use the tools or the resources available to you to make sure the next draft doesn't include any of those. That's all you need to do. You don't need to go in and like edit the file yourself. So instead of investing the time in redoing their work, invest that time in setting up this standard clearly at the front end, communicating what good looks like, what counts as a blocker, where you need to be involved, if at all, and what you will look at and what you expect to see when you're doing your review. So here are the 3 questions worth sitting with. Number 1, what work are you doing right now that someone on your team could be growing into? Number 2, what would need to be true for you to actually entertain the idea of delegating parts of it or delegating it all? And then when you imagine delegating something fully, what is the fear underneath that hesitation? Is it the quality of the output? Is it the concern that your reputation is at stake when something goes wrong? Or your sense of value that you get if you are not the one executing, if you're not involved? And sometimes it also helps to take a step outside of our own personality and just look at this more objectively. If you hired a manager tomorrow who shows some overfunctioning tendencies, the way that you currently do, What would you want them to change in their first 90 days on the job? And sometimes looking at it from the outside perspective gives us new indications of what are these immediate next steps. So one thing to try this week is pick one recurring task that you are still doing yourself or how you get involved in to some extent. Ask what would need to be true for someone on your team to own this. And if the answer is, I would need to show them once, okay, great, delegating in the next 7 days. If the answer is they would need more context, then have that conversation. It's not yet a task to absorb right away, but loop them in so that they gain the context. If this was useful, make sure to subscribe to the podcast or the YouTube channel. And if delegation is a personal challenge or something that you notice in others or a team-wide pattern, then check out the link in the description to the Leadership Accelerator. The teams with the most capacity are not the ones with the most talented managers. They're the ones with managers who are good at giving it away and coaching their team up to higher standards and competence. That's it for now. We'll see you next week with another episode of the Manager Track podcast. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this episode, then check out 2 other awesome resources to help you become a leader people love to work with. This includes a free masterclass on how to successfully lead as a new manager. Check it out at arkova.org/masterclass. The second resource is my best-selling book, The Confident and Competent New Manager: How to Quickly Rise to Success in Your First Leadership Role. Check it out at arkova.org/books or head on over to Amazon and grab your copy there.